Welcome to Inspired Men Talk, four solution-focused therapists born in 4 different decades who openly and honestly discuss their perspectives on the issues surrounding men's mental health, the things that stigma say we don't talk about. So, welcome to this episode of Inspired Men Talk, and today we have another amazing guest, Stuart Bratt, who runs and is the founder, CEO of Tough Enough to Care, an amazing charity looking mostly at men's mental health. I know he's broadened that scope a little bit, but we want to find out so much more about Stuart and what Stuart does and why he's doing what he does. So without any further, we're going to ask Stuart to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about him. Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me on, mate, and hi to the rest of the guys as well. Yeah, so I'm Stu. I set up Tough Enough to Care back in March 2019 after I lost 2 friends to suicide within 4 days of each other. And my own background, I was the self-proclaimed sort of head coach, team manager, cheerleader, team captain of the Man Up team. Mental health was a weakness, suicide was selfish, all those negative terms and phrases that you hear. My own history, I've grown up playing rugby. I'm fat, ginger, my surname's Bratt, and my dad was a teacher at the school, so clearly I was going to go. Left school as soon as possible. Did not want to go into further education or anything like that and join the military. So I've always been in those male-dominated spaces and what I now see as those sort of toxic man-up cultures. And it had never appeared to me, or I'd never realised the damage it can do to people that were struggling. Since setting up the charity, I've realised that I've struggled probably all of my adult life and a little bit before that as well. Never wanted to admit it, never knew what I was looking for or anything like that, whether I didn't know there was a problem because I didn't know what the problem could have been. But yeah, so I left the military after 7 years. I did multiple operational tours of Iraq, Afghanistan in the RAF. And before anyone slates me, I was on Chinook helicopters. So it was more like the army than the RAF. It wasn't fast jets and Samsonite suitcases.
So it's okay, sure. I'm ex-RAF and I mostly was on squadron. So, very different from what people see as the day-to-day. So a bit greasy, bit everything else, because, it didn't, the old-fashioned version of the RAF never fitted me either. So
No, definitely not. No,
I thought you were just a cleaner, Gary, weren't you?
yes, but I cleaned the squadron.
top T-bar cleaner. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, T-bar. Oh, it is.
No, so I left the RAF and went into industrial engineering. So I was still chucking spanners at things, just different uniform and not getting shot at anymore. Still in the same mindset, the same mentality in these spaces, that mental health was the weakness and all of that. And as I said, February 2019, I had a call to say that one of the lads I served, well, he was in the Navy when I was in the RAF, but we played under 18s rugby, under 20s, 21s, 23s, first team, all the way through against each other and with each other for combined services. So he was like a brother. And it just out the blue, he had the text to say that he'd taken his own life. And instantly I went to, he's weak, he's selfish, how dare he? Can't believe he'd do that to any of us. And I was still in that mindset and I did what everybody does. I feel bad, so I'll go to the pub. Because the answer will definitely be in the bottom of 20 pint glasses. 4 days later, another message to say a friend had taken her own life. And again, she was part of that male dominated space. She was going through training for the army. And I went straight to that negative place again. How dare she? She's weak. And then I kind of stopped myself, gave myself a bit of a talking to, and said, well, neither of these people were weak. Neither were selfish. There's something more to be done here. So again, after another 20 pints, I've got an idea. and it started from a Facebook post, just said no context whatsoever, because I hadn't really told anyone why I was out on a bender. It was Friday night, so it was just, oh, I've had a rough week, and that's it. I didn't want to talk about feelings and mental health. And I just put something on Facebook. Don't be a dick, talk.
Yeah.
And woke up the next morning to a bit of piss taking, which I'd have been upset if there wasn't. I'd have
Yeah.
been seriously concerned, but nothing negative. Everything was positive, and thought, you know what, we're on to something here. And I think a lot of the soul searching that I did, every answer I came back to was that I was the problem.
Yeah.
Me and the people with my mindset were the problem. We all talk about talking. We all talk about what needs to change. Why can't we change? And that's kind of my journey from there to now, really. But as I said before, I think you Google something and you can pinpoint all the different symptoms, can't you? You know,
Yeah.
Doctor Google's this wonderful thing, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of key moments in my life that I can now pinpoint and highlight and say, I really struggled there, and there was no one around me that actually said, "Are you okay?" Put their arm around me and said, "How can we get through this together?" And that's kind of what I do now. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I hated school. I've not been to college, university. I haven't got a degree in anything. I've just got lived experience of trying to help people. And I'll be honest, it felt really crap losing two mates to something that you could potentially have saved them from. So I just don't want anybody to feel that way again.
As always, I've got about 1,000 questions which I could ask, but they keep telling me off because I talk too much and I hoggle the microphone. So before I ask my 1,000 questions, because we've got very similar backgrounds and we've spoke before, although it was quite a long time ago. Do you guys, from that amazing sort of dialogue of how Stu got to where he is, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think so. From my perspective, Stu, I mean, we probably are a similar sort of age group, and that man up culture was very something that I was brought up with as well, and it's something that we kind of we've found on this podcast is that, you know, Gary and I had one sort of upbringing, and Ben and Chris's upbringing has been slightly different as society has progressed. And do you think it's easier now for people to talk? Do you think, I mean, because we still see, or I certainly do still see, that man up culture is still about. It's not as prevalent, but it's still about. Do you think it's easier for people now to kind of seek help?
Yes and no. I think it is because people are talking about it. We do a lot of work now with schools and colleges and universities. The only time in my life I'll ever actually go to a university. And it's been talked about. You know, my kids, they're 7 and 10, and they're coming home and they're talking. They obviously know what I do, and they're talking about Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's been discussed in schools. You know, when I went through school, it was leaves are green because of this. Oh, suicide's bad. Don't kill yourself. It's rubbish. And this is the water cycle. That was mental health in school. There was nothing. And everywhere you go now, they've got access to sort of university. They've got Nightline if someone's struggling. You go into businesses and they've got EAP and the employee assistance programs. It's easier to get in touch with someone and to talk to somebody. But I think because it's almost the in thing at the minute, mental health. It's the trend across social media, the mainstream media. And I think because of that, the people that were in the man up camp are sort of sharpening the pitchforks and lighting the torches a little bit more because it's the new bad back and all that kind of stuff. So although yes, it's easy to talk and it's easier to get to talk to somebody because there are so many outlets and options now.
Yeah.
It's still that, do you want to stick your head above the trenches just in case? Because there are people that, whereas before it might have been a bit of a throwaway comment, it's now a really cutting, damaging remark because they're getting pissed off because people aren't sticking with their narrative and people are daring to stray away from the pack slightly.
Do you think that's an age-related thing as well? People say of my generation, which is slightly older than yours, compared to, say, Christopher's generation, who's the youngest one at the team. Do you think there's that Barb is more sharp with the older generation than it is the younger generation? still not children though.
I think it is, but not. It's not completely just down to age. I think it's the environment because, say for instance, you take someone straight out of school and they go into a foundry or a factory where it probably is people of our generation and older that have got that mentality because it is that tough. There's a job to be done here, and it's not pink, it's not fluffy. We need to get it done. It's that mentality. So you've got younger people then that have to fit that mold. Otherwise, they're not going to fit in at that place. And
Right.
that's when you said earlier about us diversifying from just male mental health. That's why we did it, and we changed the branding to supporting people, not labels, because we realised it wasn't just men; it was people within those spaces. It was anybody operating within that space that could be toxic that we needed to offer the support to. Because yes, generationally, the older they are, the tougher they are to the harder the nut is to crack. But it's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But then every so often, you'll get one come along and surprise you and be like, "Oh wow, he's done this job for 50 years, but he's now flying the flag for mental health." And if you can get those people, we call them the king dicks. If you can go into a rugby club or to a factory and you can pick out the king dick and you can crack that nut, everyone else will follow. It's like dominoes.
Yeah,
You've just got to spot them.
Every rugby team, every squadron. I remember when I was in every squadron, every flight, everything you was involved in, there was always that one in the squadron who was that what you call kindick, and they did their culture. Everybody was almost scared of them. There was almost bullies, in their attitude.
Yeah, and if you can find them and they don't have to go along with everything, but if they can sort of nod and smile at the odd thing and kind of buy into what you're selling, everyone else will follow because now it's almost like they're allowed to. We're allowed to be open and honest now, which is ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're all grown ups, but we still have that kind of mentality.
Out of interest, I worked in the police, but I've never been in the military. When you're out and you're serving in Iraq or you're on exercise doing something, is it that nobody talks about their mental health, or is it actually because you're more of that family unit, there's a little bit more give and people do talk about it? Because you kind of get this. I know there's a lot around veterans and coming out of the army and the lack of support potentially that's there. But what I also see is from social media and things is that when you're out on deployment, you almost are a really close family and a team. And I would kind of anticipate that there would be some talk about it, but maybe it's not. So what is it actually like when you're serving?
It's weird. Um, if you imagine, the army do 6 months about, they do long tours out there. We tended to cycle through in 2 or 3 month tours, and you'd go out with a group of lads, and you'd come back with that same group of lads. So you were there together. You were family for 2 3 months. I can tell you loads of funny things that happened on every single tour that I went on, every exercise I went on. I could never tell you what we talked about ever. I do remember one instance of one of the lads. He came out as bisexual, and like I said, just about suicide in school. We were sat there playing hookers. Ever remember hookers, Gary?
Slightly. I was in the 80s, so a lot of my memories have been lost. I'm quite old.
Fair enough. Well, it's a board game that basically you just try and shaft each other.
Yeah.
So we were there playing hookers, and we were just chatting rubbish, and out of nowhere, it just came up in conversation that he was bisexual, and then he was really worried about it. And the lads were like, "Yeah, that's fine, we know." Anyway, right, you've got to do this. So it was those kind of things that you had that support network around you. You had those conversations, but I never remember it being a conversation, if that makes sense at all. No one ever
Yeah.
sat down and went, "I'm really struggling. Can we talk?" You were family. You knew when someone was struggling. There was no way they could hide it in a place like that because you were in each other's pockets 24/7. You slept together, you ate together, you worked together. Then the only downtime you had was a couple of hours between work and sleep, and you'd go to the gym together, or you'd go for a run. You were never away from each other, so there was no hiding it. And I think because of that, there was never a need to sit and have a conversation or sit and have a chat. You were just always constantly talking and chatting. So it probably doesn't really answer your question very well, but
It does in one sense though, because I can kind of see that when you come away from that and that closeness and that relationship has gone, suddenly you become incredibly isolated and alone on the outside world. And
Yeah.
therefore that relationship where people would automatically know has just disappeared overnight. So
I
actually,
struggled hugely when I left, and I mean I've been out now for 15 years,
Mm.
but it's only been the last few months I've actually realised how much I truly struggled because, as I said, there was never those conversations of I'm struggling, I'm really excited, I'm really sad. It was just general chit chat, and we were there. Nothing was off the cards. You could talk about anything. You could share whatever you wanted. It's a bit crude, but when lads had pictures of their missus sent from home, emails, messages. You're all young lads, aren't you, at the time? And everything is shared.
Mhm.
Everyone's deepest fears, weirdest fantasies, you name it, it's talked about. It's nothing's off the table. And then as soon as you walk out of those camp gates when you leave, it's gone.
mm,
You
It's
see, to me, that backs up everything we do. We've got Inspired Men Talk. We set this up because we know men can talk and they do talk, and we don't like the idea that men don't talk, which is normally a big slogan. And like you said, when you're in that right environment, men do talk, and it doesn't, and there's no effort behind it. It happens. So that kind of just speaks to everything that we do, really. That inspired men or men do talk when
yeah.
they're given those good circumstances and that space to be able to talk freely.
I can't remember the last time one of our support groups finished on time.
No.
yeah.
I say it all the time to people say men don't talk, come to one of our groups. Because once you get them going, you just can't stop them. It's like, lads, shut up. We're
Yeah.
going home.
But so the Air Forces, obviously, all the forces might have changed a lot. So when I was in the Air Force in the 80s, in the early 80s, the only thing we got involved with was the Falklands War. And I did go to the Falklands just after the campaign, the main campaign. I was in during the campaign, but I had a different role. But then you got posted as an individual. So in the army, the squadron or whatever they call it, the troop or whatever, they all go to everything. When you get assigned to that regiment, you're in that regiment for life and you know everybody forever. In the Air Force, you're a lone ranger the whole time. You might get posted somewhere, spend 3 years there, 6 years there, and you get to know people, but everybody you get to know, oh, they've just got a posting and they've gone individually. So you never had, apart from on those detachments, you never had that collegial tightness which was always there. You was always on the verge of being isolated and posted out again and have to start again. So did that change in your time then? Was it a little bit more, you was on a squadron and you was there, you was always together?
I was really lucky because I was on Chinook helicopters down in Odium in
Yeah, yeah.
Hampshire. Operationally, it's probably one of the smallest operational bases in the UK.
I
In
was
the
on
RAF.
better helicopters. I was with Sea Kings. So they're better.
Sorry, I thought you said better. Um, yeah, I was on the king of helicopters, the
All right,
actual
yeah.
king of helicopters.
Yeah, yeah.
No, so it was a small. Odium was really small, and you would get people sort of coming in and out. But I was really lucky. I spent my entire career there,
Mm.
and you speak to people that were other bases, other units, and I was probably a little bit sort of blinkered at the time, but I wouldn't. In my head, I didn't want to be anywhere else. This was the place for me, and I was really lucky. I played a high level of rugby whilst I was in there. I was close to London, so I could go and play for the teams in there. I was in the RAF rugby team, combined services.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd do as much time away as possible.
So you
And then when
never
I was in
worked
the
on a
UK,
Wednesday?
pardon?
You never worked on a Wednesday?
Oh, Gary, when I was back in the UK, I never worked at all. I was a proper tracksuit soldier. I was.
Yeah, yeah. But Wednesday was always sports day.
Yeah.
So the Air
Good old
Force, if you
sports
wanted to
afternoon.
do anything, attack on a Wednesday afternoon because everybody would play the sport.
Yeah. Attack anywhere but the sports pavilion because it was
Yeah.
full of everyone. Yeah. No, so I'd spend months away with that band of brothers.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I was back in the UK, I'd be with my rugby family, which were from units all over the UK. So I had that. It was almost like the extended family as well. I never had to move on my own as an individual. I was always just bouncing from one pack to another pack, which again, I feel really, really lucky that and fortunate that I had that opportunity, because I know a lot of people can bounce around and it's a 3-year post, and then just as you've really got to know people, you're on the move to the other end of the country again, and then you bounce in and you bounce in, and if you've got a wife and kids, it's going to be even tougher because the upheaval there. I was lucky; I never had those pressures. I literally just played,
So
played,
I've got a
and
big
got paid to get pissed for 7
yeah,
years.
absolutely. So I've got a question for you. Why didn't you put your arm around people when you was a serviceman, when you was a rugby player? That's what you wish now.
Oh yeah, I think one, I would have been embarrassed to, because I didn't think that was the manly thing to do. And people talk about the toxic masculinity in the forces. It's not as bad as people say. It is there. It's the same with racism. It's there in every part of life, but it's not as bad as the press would have you believe.
That's not,
But they break you down to rebuild you into their mold, which I get it. You know, they're trying to build every single one of you into a machine that fits a purpose. And I think because of that, you adopted that mentality of it's weak if you speak. It's not manly. It's not strong to put your arm around someone. You just put your big boy pants on and crack on. And I now see how damaging that was, but at the time it just felt normal. So I don't think it was that I didn't want to or didn't put my arm around somebody. I didn't see that as an option. It just wasn't, again, it wasn't something that was on the table to go, oh, he's struggling. He definitely needs some proper sort of like man cuddle right with in this together. It was easier to just go, oh, come on, you were fine last week. I saw you smiling yesterday. There's nothing wrong with you. And it was the easy route then to just crack on with the job.
What would you say your? I know obviously you had your two friends, Stuart, that took their own lives, but when you came out of being in the services, what was your biggest personal challenge for you in terms of your mental well-being?
I'd lost all sense of purpose. I had all these grand ideas. I was leaving and it was all set. I was joining the police. So I was going to go straight from the RAF into the police. I'd spoken to them and I was going to go down the firearms route after a few years, blah, blah, blah. Everything was spot on. 6 months into my 12-month notice period, the recession hit, the 2009 financial crash. And the police, along with pretty much the rest of the world, just stopped recruitment. Everywhere was just stop it. So I thought, right, well, I'm still going to come out because that's my plan. And I'll just pick up a couple of jobs. And then when it all picks up again, I'm going to get back on that journey. That's my purpose in life, to do that. And I walked out those camp gates and I just slumped. I thought it'll be a couple of weeks of party period, then I'll have to work. The joke is when you leave the forces, you're going to have to work for a living now.
yeah.
Luckily enough, I got into a job, say doing the industrial engineering. 6 months after that, I was laid off again because of the recession. And that's when it properly kicked me, because I'd gone into this job and it was 3 nights on average working away from home, decent money, still going around the country, 3 up in a van with a group of lads, glass bottle of iron brew, some newspaper, and a pack of fags. That kind of stereotypical view. I kind of thought, yeah, I'm all right here. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I still missed. It wasn't that closeness. It was just lads and banter. There was no connection. And then after 6 months, when they laid me off, it just floored me. And you ask all the questions you ask yourself: have I done the right thing? Why did I leave a job that I was so good at? There's only a few of us in the whole of the RAF that could do what we did. Why did I leave that job?
Yeah.
I've messed up. I'm going to be a rubbish. I was getting married at the time, and I thought I'm going to be a rubbish husband because I can't bring anything in. And again, that mindset of I'm the man, I earn the money, I have to be the strong type. So I just sort of pushed through it, but I lost, as I say, I lost all sense of purpose. There was just I had no identity anymore. I was just your standard bloke out of work. I'd gone from I was fighting wars for my country to I've got to sign on next week, and I couldn't get my head around that.
I want to I want to throw Gary's question back at him, because obviously, Gary, you were also in the forces, and Chris,
Yeah.
Ben, and I haven't been. So did you ever put your arm around anybody when you were in there? Did you ever kind of have that mental
So
health thing?
again, I was in the 80s, so it was even a little bit more different, a little bit probably harder from a point of man up point of view. So I've done 6 years, Stuart done 7. And it's really weird because that's not a long time. You speak to a lot of servicemen and they've done the 20 years and 22, whatever. And you can go, oh, they're institutionalized. And I was talking to Ben just before we were started about how you walk out those gates, you're D-milk happy. The first thing you do is grow your hair. And you burn your uniform sort of thing, and he's got a beard and that, but he's still got a short haircut because eventually it sort of goes full circle. You go back to what you're trained, and even after just doing 6 years, it's like Stuart said, actually they break you down and build, so you can't get rid of some of those disciplines. Even though you go, I wish I didn't have them, but they are who you are now. So one of the and I think I've told you this before, and it's something I'm very embarrassed about now, but when I was in the 80s, it was illegal to be gay in the forces. And there was a guy, Andy, and he was so effeminate now looking back. And he ultimately used to get a lot of stick. And I never gave him stick, but I never looked after him. I never protected him. And he ended up being quite a dishonest sort of chap. But now you look back, he was like stealing the tea money from the tea bar, from the squadron to get the train home and things like that. And then he went AWOL and things. But we had SIB, which Stuart might know what that means. They come and questioned us all because he used to get beaten up by some of the alpha males in the group, those King Dicks, because he was, and it was what you wouldn't do that. And if somebody was struggling and they were showing what we saw, just being wusses or wimps, or, you just see them as not capable. Not that they needed any help. They shouldn't have joined. That was it. They shouldn't have joined. And the quicker they get an admin discharge, quite often they did. And now you realise, Jesus, half of that was caused by our behaviour of not actually supporting them, not even doing anything bad to them, but not supporting them. So in those early 80s, it was still probably wrong. One of my best friends in the Air Force, Ronnie, he was a big black guy. And we had an Asian sergeant who was called Sergeant Matthews. That wasn't his real name, but he changed it because otherwise he wouldn't have fitted in. That's what the forces were like back then. Now I think it's so much better. But then you've got Stuart setting up a charity to support veterans. So there's still something wrong. I don't know what it is.
Well, I have to say that we still do a lot of work with serving forces as well, not just veterans, and it is changing. It's in small pockets. It's not happening as a sort of overarching umbrella change, but there are small pockets with the camp I was on, Odium, doing loads.
Beautiful camp, Little Odeon.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it there. Every time I get an invite, oh, we're having a mental health awareness week. We can't pay expenses. I'm there. Don't worry, I'm coming. Leaming up north.
Yeah.
So just pockets randomly around the country that they are starting to make those changes. But going back to what you were saying there, Gary, I remember it's just a memory's come back to me going through basic training, and you've got 6 or 8 bed spaces, and what they do, your final, I think it was the day 42 inspection, they take you out on the ground for a 3 or 4 day exercise, and you have to take all of your kit with you, all of your green kit.
Yeah.
And even if it's the hottest, sunniest 4 days, they will find that pool of mud on the last 10 minutes.
Sheep shit.
Yeah, just so everything's covered and you've had no sleep for 3 or 4 days. And right, get yourself squared away. 0800 tomorrow morning inspection. Day 42 is everything. Everything you own.
Bed packed, a lot. Everything had to be perfect.
And this guy, we all were there or thereabouts, and this guy was just sat, his stuff piled on his bed behind him, in his pants, just sat cross-legged, head in hands, just rocking. They'd broken him. they pushed and pushed and pushed, and he was broken. And at the time, no one put an arm around him. I remember it now quite vividly. We didn't put an arm around him. We just asked him to move out the way. So we all clubbed together to help him, but by getting his bed space done and all his kit done and folded and everything, no one actually checked on him, because if we can get that done, the room doesn't get in trouble.
Yes.
Because if one person lets the room down, we're all getting in trouble.
Yeah.
It's
So
the
it's
sort of
saving
thing,
your own necks.
if if they find a dead woodlouse in your wardrobe, you'll get a punishment for keeping a pet, and then you get another punishment for letting it die. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is true.
And
Yeah.
I remember polishing galvanized dustbins one day on Jankers.
Yeah, or painting the grass green and
Yeah.
painting the curbstones black again when royalty was coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's only just come back to me, that memory, and yeah, no one put an arm. The only arm they put round him was to move him out of the way so we could get the job done. And I won't say his name because I'm pretty certain he passed out and he's probably still in the forces now. But had we have just left him that day, he'd have been beasted up and down the parade square, and it wouldn't have been nice for anybody.
I just want to kind of drop back a little bit. Something you said early on was that this new attitude towards mental health, with it being almost trendy, which we hear a lot, it'll be almost fashionable. It's getting talked a lot about in schools. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. They do a lot of talking about it, but they also do a lot of negative talking about it, in a sense that it becomes a part of their culture, having mental health issues. And you said something really interesting that made me think, actually, that is more damaging to progress with mental health than it is helpful sometimes. And I just want to talk a little bit more about that, because actually I think that's a really important thing. There's a lot of good work happening around mental health. There's a lot of people like yourself, why you're doing this, and like they are trying to talk about it more. But there seems to be a line that's almost getting a bit muddied and a little bit blurred, where when is too much and where does it go too far, where it's actually having a counter effect, where, like you say, you get those people that are a bit more mental health is something that you don't need to talk about. Like you say, they're sharpening their pitchforks up because it's becoming more and more in your face, more and more as far as they're concerned. So, and this is not just a generational thing. Like I think that's been said a couple of times, because I know people my own age that have that same attitude to, oh, he's saying he's got anxiety. It just can't be asked to go to work. It's the new bad back, like you said. I've heard that said by so many people of my age and older and younger. So where do we think that we can work through that? How can we balance this?
I think it's tough because the bad back one, and I say this to a lot of people, yes, mental health is the new bad back. And that's going to be used by the people that have used the bad back excuse. And those same people that use bad back are now using mental health. And in 6 months' time, when it's pink cabbages that are the thing, they'll be using that excuse. And those people will never change. They'll only change the narrative of how they're getting time off work, basically. And it's really hard because everybody kind of gets tarred with that brush. Going back to the bed space in the room inspection, we all had to pick up his slack. So that instant mindset, oh, he's off with mental health, new bad back. We've all now got to pick up his workload. So then the genuine person that is struggling won't come out and say that they're struggling, because they don't want to be, the way they see it, as a burden on everybody else. And I think your other comment that you said is absolutely spot on. I think we're on a knife edge at the minute on everybody wants a label. Like I get it. There were lads I went to school with who clearly had autism, ADHD, and they would have been in a much better place in life now had they got the support they clearly needed in the mid-80s, 90s when we went through school. But that being said, there is now probably a queue at the head teacher's door of every primary school across the UK. I want a label on my child because I want this and we're going to get that. And not every child needs labeling. You do just genuinely get naughty kids, quiet kids, crazy kids. They don't have to have that label, but because it's being talked about and Dr. Google is on hand. You know, I'm sat here now, I've got two phones next to me. I'm at a laptop. Dr. Google's everywhere. People want these labels because they think they're going to be answers, and they almost feel they have to live up to, if that diagnosis is that symptom, that symptom, that symptom, they push themselves to act in that way to kind of achieve that label, which I think is really dangerous. And I think it could see a lot of mental health support come crashing down because the people that genuinely need it are stuck in a queue with people that are just trying to find that label.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing to take away from that. It's those people that genuinely need it, and like you say, even with the with people being diagnosed with additional needs, you know, they have to jump through 20 more hoops and wait twice as long because of that. And those are the people that genuinely need the support. I don't know if it's necessarily people doing this intentionally to get the attention or to get the label for selfish reasons. I think it's subliminally been embedded into a culture at the moment, particularly at that young age. Teenagers at the moment, I don't think they're screaming out these things because of any malicious intent. I don't think they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I think they believe it, and I think that's the most dangerous part of it. You know, and these parents queuing up at the teacher's office, I think 90% of them believe it. It's not they're doing it for personal gain. It's been embedded through media, through even social media, and through I mean, like you just like at the pub, you've always got the professor, haven't you? You've always got the pub philosopher. The school gate's no different. You know, when you go on the school run, there's always those parents that know everything about everything and can diagnose every child. It's in the culture, and I don't think it's a selfish reason. I think it's just been embedded.
Yeah, and it's tough as well because my eldest, he needs some additional support at school, and we're starting to get worried now because he's going into year 6 next year, and obviously we're starting looking at high schools, and there's certain schools we want to get him into, but if he hasn't got a certain plan in place because of funding and because there are so many people, we can't get. And I hate it. I really absolutely hate it. But we kind of need that label to get him that. We try as much as we can at home. He gets as much support as the school can possibly give him. But without, if he just got that one little label and tick in a box somewhere after jumping through 50 hoops and over 100 hurdles, all of a sudden the world opens up to him.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I'm kind of on both sides of the fence. I want people to stop going for the labels so I can selfishly get him some support.
Yeah.
But equally, everybody should have the same crack of the whip. You know, that everyone should have that chance to do it. And yeah, like you said, no one's doing it maliciously. It's because it's so out there. People think that's the way they need to go. That's genuinely. It's not. I'm going to hatch a plan. It's this is how life is, and this is the way we've got to do it now.
I think that comes
Absolutely.
back to the point you made, though. It's like the mental health services are going to basically fall over a break. I think they already have.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think, and you know, I think if that's why we're in this position, it's who shouts the loudest, who does what they need to do to get in the door, and you know, hence we've seen you set up your own charity to support guys or women who are struggling with their own mental health, because reality is primary care doesn't exist. It's completely fallen over and it's completely broken.
no, you're right, 100%. And it's worrying at the minute. Within the last 2 weeks, I've seen two small charities, bigger than us, but on the grand scheme of things, small charities who have been doing great things for a good many years. They've folded because there's just no money. Last week alone, none of our services need referrals, but last week alone, we had 10 referrals from NHS social prescribers to come to our support groups and use our services and stuff. Yet, in that same 2 week period that we've had all of these referrals come our way, we've had not one single accepted funding request. We've had 12 thanks but no thankses, or 10 thanks but no thankses. You know, so we're having all this additional pressure on our services. You're seeing all these reports about the NHS just bleeding money left, right, and centre. And those same people are sending them to us. and everyone's saying, yeah, sorry, no, we're not going to give you any money. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how we're supposed to carry on. Is it sort of like handshakes and backslaps or what? But something's clearly broken because the primary care is overrun and there's no backup plan. And I don't think it comes down to sort of government or anything like that. So without trying to get political, something somewhere's got to change very soon.
So not being political, but being political. It's almost a conspiracy theory that, and I've been doing this for 13 years, working in the mental health space as a private practitioner. The other four guys, or the other three guys here, private practitioners, you run a mental health charity. And we're getting busier and busier, and the whole industry is getting busier and busier. But the NHS have not really changed, and not because of their fault. You know, they get the smallest budget for all health services, although they're one of the biggest needs. And children's mental health gets 6% of that budget, even though most mental health challenges start before the age of 18. So maths don't work out. And I've got this theory is mental health are trying, you know, the governments, the politics of the day, regardless of colour, are trying to marginalise mental health like they did dentistry. So you now become private. Mental health, apart from the severe cases of psychosis and things like that, but generalised mental health issues, you go private. And I think that's where they're trying to move mental health because it's too big to take on as the NHS. They've messed it up too much, whichever colour of the politics. And I think slowly but surely you're going to end up with mental health all being either charity based or private practice based.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry for something like that is private practitioners, absolutely brilliant for what you do because people can access it instantly rather than an 18-month waiting list. But just look at dentistry. Look how many people that they're living through absolute agony.
Yeah.
Because they either can't get into a dentist or they just simply can't afford it. And my worry there is, and I'm not saying this is a dig at you guys because you're not. I don't know the rest of you, but Gary, I know you, and I know you're not that sort of person. If it privatizes, people struggling with their mental health are in a moment of weakness. You know, where they can be sort of preyed upon by someone, and
totally.
it becomes okay to go to these private practices. There will be people out there, just like the bad back people, that will prey on the vulnerable.
Unfortunately, there'll be private practitioners who prey on those vulnerable people. We work very hard. Two of us are lecturers. We try and train the best people and we try and uphold that best thing. But there will be people who just say, oh, I can make money out of this without actually delivering a quality service. And we are all worried about that. But I think, you know, in my head, it's got to be like dentistry. You can still have NHS dentistry if you can find it.
I was going to say,
they're just marginalising.
Heard rumours of this NHS dentistry.
Yeah, it's still there. They haven't privatised it. They just made it impossible. So anybody with any level of income, any level, because if you wanted to go completely private for a dentist tomorrow, you could go into dentistry to get a dentist tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's those people who sit there can't go private, so they have to. The service is so small. And that's what they're forcing. And I think mental health is going that way. They will have spaces, but they'll be so limited. And it'll go back to where Ben was saying, who shouts the loudest? Who's, you know, so apart from the extreme cases who might get taken under hospital care. And that's why I personally see mental health going. And that's why work that you're doing and things like that, unfortunately, just like we're private practice, we shouldn't be needed. And just like you're a charity, you shouldn't be needed. And both of us are doing, or all five of us are doing the work we do because there's a massive need there. And there's a gap which is getting wider for those people who need support.
Yeah, and I think because as that gap is getting wider, there are a lot of people that are falling into that gap. They struggle to get out because they're having to either wait so long, they're not quite sure where to turn. And you mentioned private practice to someone, instantly your head goes to that's going to cost me 10 grand.
Yeah.
Seeing that there are actually affordable options.
Yeah.
And again, I think it all comes down to education. Not saying that people are stupid, but if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's understanding that there are affordable options and different avenues to get that support rather than your 5-minute call with the GP that you had to book 6 months ago, and that's all you're getting.
Yeah. One thing, Stuart, one thing we haven't really talked about while you're here. So when it comes to what you do, your charity, what you provide, talk us a little bit through the process of what you can actually offer for people and what your charity does for
So
people
we
who don't
are,
know.
straight off the bat, we're a non-clinical sort of support service. Basically, we offer weekly peer support groups for men. We've got men's groups, women's groups. We did have an LGBTQ plus group down in Basingstoke. Those facilitators are just taking a bit of time for themselves at the minute. And again, something I'm always quite passionate about. Facilitators take priority over the group, and if they need to take their time, they're taking a break. But yeah, so we offer support groups. It's all on the website rather than me trying to list every single one because it's different days, times, locations, but they're free. We always. We'll go on, Gary. Sorry, mate. You
So I was
talking?
on mute. They'll all take the mic now because I'm technology. It's not just in Birmingham then.
No, it's all over. So where have we got? We've got one 100 yards that way tonight, the Warleith group over the road from the office. We've got Basingstoke men's group, Worksworth in Derbyshire. We've got a men's and a women's group. It's currently expanding at RAF Shawbury. They set one up for people on the camp, but they're looking at opening that up to everybody now because it's at the Hive, which is just off camp, so people don't need to sign on and stuff like that. We've got one all the way down near Bishop Stortford. So we're spreading out and we've got them all over and they're free to attend. I mentioned before, there's no referral needed, there's no booking necessary. And if you want to rock up and just listen, there's no pressure to talk. The kettle's always on and the biscuit barrel's always full. So it's just that place. I say to people, it's the pub without the beer. It's just somewhere to go and have that sense of belonging, to listen to other people. And a lot of the time, you listen to other people, and it's not to say, "Oh, at least I'm not as bad as them," or "I feel worse now because might have got this wrong with me" or something. It's to understand that we're all going through something that's affecting us, and it's completely different for everybody. I heard a great saying last week: one person's trauma is another person's Tuesday, and it couldn't be more
Wow.
fitting for the support groups. That you go in there and what you think is seemingly nothing. I put up with that 4 times a week. What's the problem? If it's affecting that person, it's affecting them, and vice versa. So it's really good environment to go and just talk and get things off your chest. We've partnered up with Shout, the text service, so we offer a free 24-hour text support service, which is unlike web chats and bots. It is a human volunteer the other end of the phone. And the reason we went with text service is because you don't have to book a time. There's no chance of being overheard on the phone. I don't mind talking like this, but I don't like talking on the phone. Whereas a text, I'll sit there and text all day. Plus, you could be sat in the pub, you could be sat watching TV with your partner, and they've got no idea you're texting someone. It's that anonymous. So we've got that offer available. And when I say they're trained volunteers, I run a mental health charity. I instruct mental health first aid, suicide first aid, all of that. I failed the training to become a volunteer twice. So it's quite involved to actually become a trained volunteer for them.
Cool.
And then we do other things like public events.
Well, I'm going to say, last time we spoke, which was a while ago, you were just getting delivery of your new van.
Oh, yeah, that's, I don't see because I'm blurred in the background, but yeah, that's out in the car park, the tough truck. Yeah, so we go all over the place. We've got a converted transporter camper van, all sort of sign written up and everything, and we just plonk ourselves at every event possible and just get people to come and talk. And even I'm not into cars, but I see a big shiny camper van with a massive bicep logo on the side. I'm going to go and check it out. And we've hooked them in then. They can't get away. That's becoming probably one of our best avenues to support people. And the reason we went for the conversion was there's seats and a table inside it. So when the rest of the world's outside at the event, we can shut the door and we can just have a chat with someone in private there and then, rather than, oh, come a week on Tuesday or book a time in or something. We have that conversation. And then we've branched out into the Flaming Unicorns rugby team as well now, which started off as a joke. We just had one fundraiser and thought that worked. Let's see where we go from there. We've now got over 175 players in the squad. We've
Jesus.
raised over, I think we're probably tipping 35 grand now raised for the charity. It's the charity's single biggest income stream, like on its own as a fundraiser. And we just go from club to club, play a game of social rugby, and it was our in to get into those spaces. Because if you just said, "Oh, can we come and talk about mental health?" Yeah, no, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
Turn up with some flaming unicorn gangster rugby shirts. Can we come and have a game of rugby? Oh yeah, that sounds fun. And then you talk about mental health afterwards. Everyone buys into it, so
Yeah.
it's working well.
I guess when you're a rugby team, you're the scrum half, yes?
Yeah, scrum half or winger.
Yeah. You look like it.
I'm retiring soon because I am officially broken. The military broke me, and then rugby broke me further. But no, it's good fun, and as I say, it gets people talking. The offshoot of that has been the WhatsApp group for the players. Like we just thought it'd be, oh, we'll put the fixture on and that's it. We've now implemented a life check. So once a week, and they just put a score out of 10. Anything over 4 or 5, then they say they're dealing with it or whatever. And you can just put your score, or you can put your score and the reason why. Anyone 4 or under, unless they say, but I'm dealing with it, I don't need a reach out. We've now got 25 trained mental health first aiders in the group. If someone puts a score under 4, someone reach out straight away. So that digital arm comes out, and it's a support group for 175 people available 24 hours a day. And it's nuts to think that it went from, I want to stick a funky unicorn on a t-shirt and play. It's an excuse to play rugby and tell the missus I'm working.
Perfect. And you also got a summer ball coming up, haven't you?
We have, yeah. It's actually in 3 weeks' time. Yeah, black tie ball. Again, just trying to find different ways of getting us out there to people, trying to, 1, raise a bit of money, but 2, just getting people in a room and thanking them for their support. And again, I get to have a party and tell the missus I'm working.
Yeah.
It turned out all right.
To finish off then, how can people either reach out for your services or support you?
Either way, I'd say we're tough enough to care on all the social medias other than Twitter that we're tough care, because tough enough to care is too big apparently. Or the website toughenoughToCare.org. All of our contact stuff's on there, so any support that you want or could give, that you can contact us there through either a private message or an email. And we're a small team. We've got lots and lots of volunteers. We wouldn't operate without our volunteers. It'd be impossible. There's only 3 of us that are full time, and you'll never be waiting more than a few hours for a reply. Because I think between myself and Alex, we sleep about 3 hours a day. So yeah, it's just get in contact that way through the website, through social media, and there's always someone there that's willing to talk. And even if you're having to wait, say it was Tuesday today and you're the group closest to you was a Monday, we'll also help signpost people to other services within their area.
Yeah.
So they're not having to wait that full week, or we'll support them until it comes around that they can go to a support group. So, and I'd just say to anyone listening, just if you've ever kind of teetered on, shouldn't I reach out and talk to someone? The funniest thing in the world is watching a bloke kick himself after 10 minutes of being in a support group because he didn't go in for 6 months because he's had to build up the courage, and all of a sudden he's realised I've missed out on 6 months of this. And it's not all sitting around in a circle and patting each other on the back. It is just a laugh. It's that sense of belonging and being there. The Warleith lads, they have a biscuit competition. Who can bring the nicest biscuits? So why wouldn't you turn up to something like that?
I'll be there. I don't need to come to the support group this time, but the biscuits, that would win every time.
Sells it for me as well.
Just Fox's biscuits, they win every time. I'm
afraid,
so.
maybe not. We could have a competition on Saturday when I see you. Stuart, we're going to come to an end now. So we could run this podcast, in my opinion, for about 2 days and we'd still have loads of conversation. I'm sure you've heard that lots before, but you're an amazing advocate for what we do, what you do, and you talk about it so passionately and so interestingly. So thank you for that. So thank you for me, guys.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I still have a million questions, as Gary said, but yeah, thank you. It's been brilliant chatting with you.
Fab, no, thank you for having me on. Anyone that knows me will tell you I'll talk about this till the cows come home. I'm not very well educated in it, but I'm very passionate about it.
It's been brilliant to have you, Stuart. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to meet you, Stuart, and thanks again.
And based on the fact that Peter's got 1,000 more questions, maybe in a few months you can come on and give us an update where you're going, and we can ask the rest of the questions we've got.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
Maybe get Alex on as well, one of your team. Just be interesting. So we'll stay in contact, and we'll also promote everything you do. Inspired Men Talk. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast that proves men do talk.
If you would like more information or support, then please visit inspiredtochange.biz,
where you can learn more about us and the Inspired to Change team.
And remember, the conversation continues on our social media at Inspired Men Talk.